Masks. Masks were these extravagant dramas that were held privately for the kings and queens. It was not meant for the ordinary public, it was only meant for the royal court. These dramas were called masks because the actors who act out the drama on this stage, they wear mask throughout the drama, and then at the end of it they remove their mask and reveal their identity. Okay, the mask originated in Renaissance Italy and it flourished in England during the reign of Elizabeth I, James I, Charles I. The plot for these dramas, these plays, are often mythological. They orient towards mythological and allegorical, okay, to exude kind of superiority over other dramas. So they mainly choose mythological about gods and everything, and allegorical, which are mostly didactic. These dramas consist combined poetic drama, music, song, dance, splendid costuming, and stage spectacle. When you hear of Masque, you must remember the architect Inigo Jones. He was uh, he was excellent in designing this stage of masque because these masks needed elaborate stages which cost a fortune of the king. Many prominent writers of the day wrote masks to be performed in front of the king. Some of the important mask writers, they did not only write masks but they did include masks there in their over. Ben Jonson, who wrote The Masque of Blackness, The Masque of King, etc. Then we have Shakespeare's, within the fourth act, Shakespeare included a masque, and then Milton's Sage, Comus. Then anti-masque was formed by, as was a form developed by Ben Jonson. In contrast to the elegance, order, and ceremony of the masque, these anti-masque featured ludicrous action, grotesque and unruly characters. Okay, I'll talk about modernism here. Modernism, if you think about it, you really don't know when it started because there is not an exact time, date, or a specification that it started today, it started at this hour. It is not like that. But then when you study the works of that period, when you study the art of that period, you realize that a change has taken place, a distinct change has taken place which breaks it from the previous period, and that is why it has to be named differently. Now, in order for study purposes, our history is broken into periods, and modernism is believed to have started after the world wars, the devastating world war that has changed the face of the world quite literally. Before world war, you can see that there is order in literature, there is peace, there is order, there is rules in it. But after world war, the situation that existed among the people resonated with literature. It reflected whatever was going on in the society. It was like a mirror. The form, the subjects, the concepts, everything showed the different state of mind, the different era that human beings are entering. You can take the example of the works of modern writers like James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, uh, Friedrich Nietzsche, Pound, T.S. Eliot. Right? If you look at their work is not coherent whole. It depicts the chaos that it is depicting the chaos of the period that they are living in. The narration was quite different. The stream of consciousness has started. Stream of consciousness is quite disjointed, it is not orderly, right? And the narrative is never linear in modern period. It is broken, it is totally broken. The narrative is quite disjointed, and the subject is also very bitter, and like the angry young man movement, you can see it talks about dissatisfaction, talks about tragedy, talks about loneliness. It doesn't it doesn't try to be didactic, because people have lost their beliefs, people have lost their belief in the traditional order. The the war that has taken so many people and that has spilled so much tragedy into their lives, that people are broken inside and they do not believe that the traditional order, uh, which they have been living by for so many years, would do them any good, because there is nothing to be happy right now. There are no jobs, there are there was death in every family, there was discontentment, and people are becoming very insensible, emotionless, apathetic. They are just becoming like machines. They are living just for the sake of living. They are not living life really. So the literature had quite a radical change, and in modernism, the phenomena, the avant-garde movement emerged. Avant-garde means, simply it is make it new movement. Everything is made new. Nothing of the older world is followed in this period. The catastrophe of the war had shaken faith in the moral basis, coherence, and durability of Western civilization and raised doubts about the adequacy of traditional literary modes to represent the harsh and dissonant realities of the post war world. The older literature cannot really depict the contemporary situation now, because the world has changed drastically and in a really less amount of time. The literary works that act as a mirror of the modern world are Ulysses by James Joyce, The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, Jacob's Room by Virginia Woolf, etc. We also have philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, James G. Fraser. Their philosophies are quite different now. Earlier, the philosophers, their philosophies somewhat matched, but these philosophers and their philosophies has changed to suit the scenario of the contemporary world. In art, the movements like expressionism, surrealism, cubism, futurism, abstract expressionism has come into being. Myth. Myth is a Greek word. It signifies any story or plot, whether true or invented. Mythology, it is a series of hereditary stories that has been passed from generation to generation. Myths are shared by a cultural group, and they believe that those stories are true. That really happened at one point of time. This story features god and goddesses, and and these stories are often held in highest regard. Myths are there to tell how the world originated, why the world is as it is, what is right, what is wrong, what can be accepted, what is unacceptable. It provides rationale for social customs and observances, and to establish the sanction for the rules by which people conduct their lives. People confuse between myth, legend, and folklore or folk tale. I'll tell you the difference. Myth is where it features God, the highest uh, beings in the earth, right? Not in the earth, but they were believed to have walked on earth at one point of time. And legends are the traditional stories, the hereditary stories which feature human beings. Okay, they do not feature any supernatural being. And the stories which have supernatural beings in it but not god and goddesses, they are called fairy. Myths might be ancient stories, traditional stories, but they are an important area of research in the 20th century. They are in no way irrelevant to English literature. We have very important myth critics like Robert Graves, Francis Ferguson, Maud Botkin, Richard Chase, Northrop Frye. Then we have Levi Strauss, Hans Blumenberg. These are some of the names that come with myth criticism. I'll make a video on myth criticism if you want. You can comment below if you want a video on myth criticism. Negative capability is a term that John Keats has come up with. He used this term in a letter, not in any critical piece or his poem. He has used this term while writing a letter, while describing a literary quality to a friend of his. And this letter, the friend later published this letter, and that is how negative capability has come in the literary world. See, unlike the contemporary world, in earlier people used to write letters, and those letters could go for even 10 pages. People used to pour their heart out onto it, and prominent writers, they pour their innermost thoughts into it, and it becomes full of content, even publishable. So this is the reason we have so many letters today in the market of prominent people, and people read those because it is Pandora's box in a positive way. Okay, so talking about negative capability. Negative capability is a term used by John Keats. It talks about the incapabilities, inconsistencies, mysteries that we find in a whole book. According to Keats, Shakespeare had enormous amounts of negative quality because he did not impose himself onto his characters. He did not impose himself onto his narration. He let the characters do the talking. He let the characters carry the plot. He did not. He gave multiple points of view, and Shakespeare did not really dictate which view. He let the audience decide, right? He let the audience decide. He did not dictate which view to take. He did not run for the ultimate truth or the ultimate philosophy of life, because life is mysterious. There is nothing absolute about life. Life is not black and white as we say today. It is shades of grey. So you cannot say something is absolutely correct or something is absolutely wrong. There are so many factors behind something. There are so many factors working on something that there is nothing absolute about anything in nature. So according to Keats, a writer should not impose himself onto his characters, onto his narration, onto his subject, onto his poetry. He should be objective about everything and not subjective. Subjectivity is not a quality of great writers. Objectivity is. There has, in a book, if it's a good book, there will be inconsistencies, there will be mysteries, there will be silences, there will be doubts, uncertainties, and that is good, and this is negative capability.